I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners for March 30th, 2015. Since it's a special meeting, we dispense with most of our pleasantries. I would like to recognize and welcome Oakland Mayor Tim Hunt for being here. Warren County Attorney Amy Milliken is here. Former magistrate, member of Chapter 58, Doc Kalin is here with their attorney, Scott Backert. Am I missing any other ones? Okay, thank you for coming. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Denning.
Here.
Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Perigin.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Here. First item is approval of minutes for 3 meetings, a special meeting on March 12th, 2015, the regular meeting on March 17th, 2015, and the special meeting on March 26th, 2015.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Williams. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Perigin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Second reading as amended of ordinance BG 2015, number 6.
Ordinance amending zoning ordinance. Ordinance amending Articles 2 through 8 of the zoning ordinance for the City of Bowling Green, Kentucky, as recommended by the City County Planning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Denning. This is a second reading. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Perigin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Municipal Order 2015-44.
Municipal order authorizing the approval and submission of fiscal year 2016 annual plan and 5-year plan update for the Housing Choice Voucher Program.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Williams. Mr. Febo.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Bowling Green is what is known as an entitlement community for HUD CDBG funds. Pursuant to that status, we have to submit to HUD an annual plan as well as a 5-year plan. We use a Citizens Advisory Committee to help us put together our priorities. We're here today to get your authorization to submit the plan. Brent Childers is here if you'd like any questions about the plan. It's been discussed with you a number of times, but Brent's here if you would like some further vetting of the issue.
Any comments or discussion? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Perigin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. First reading of ordinance BG 2015, number 7.
Ordinance amending Code of Ordinances. Ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration, Subchapter 2-2 Board of Commissioners of the City of Bowling Green Code of Ordinances to revise the regular meeting schedule of the Board of Commissioners.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Perigin. Mr. Febo.
I think it'd be right order for Commissioner Hill or Commissioner Perigin to address this particular issue.
Any comments?
We were both at a meeting one time and we're discussing how come the City Commission meeting started at 7 p.m. In the beginning, it was to make sure more citizens were involved, but we hope all of our citizens understand the majority of the commissioners do have regular jobs as well. So when we're here late at night, it does impact us the next day. So we were wanting to amend this, and what we recommend when we have things come before the commission that will impact many citizens, we will put them at the end of the agenda to give people time to get here after work.
Great. Also staff time. We've experienced some very, very late nights, so to have an executive session after a regular meeting, after 7 p.m. Regular meeting was pretty taxing. So we feel like 4:30 in the afternoon, typically our meetings last more than an hour. That would give folks time to come straight from work and be at home with their families in the evening.
Any other comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Perigin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Municipal Order 2015-45.
Municipal order approving tax increment financing district summary of 2013 incremental revenue and authorizing distributions to the appropriate recipients.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Denning. Mr. Febo.
Under the parameters of the TIF, Tax Increment Financing District Agreement, 80% of the money that's collected in increments in the district gets distributed by the city. Jeff has looked at these and is here tonight to recommend a distribution for 2013 TIF funds. Jeff?
As you can see in your memo, we collected around $466,000 total between the original area and the expanded area. That's over the 50 blocks. That gets divvied up 80-20. So the 80% came out to be $373. Also in your packets are the breakdown of how that money is to be distributed based on the revenue sharing agreement from 2013. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? Any other comments, Mr. Febo?
I do not.
Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Perigin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Item number 5 is a discussion of terms regarding the TIF district. And Mr. DeFebo, I'll just turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. With us today is Mr. Jim Parsons. Jim is an attorney from Covington. He has a lot of experience in the TIF programming, not only here with the original TIF back in 2006, but in all the duplicate TIFs across the state. To center the discussion, it might be helpful if Jim could come forward before we discuss particular issues to give an overview of how TIF works and the uniqueness of our TIF here in Bowling Green. Jim Parsons, I give you him. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Mayor and members of the board, it's a pleasure to be here today in Bowling Green as we talk about this particular issue and things. The city manager did ask me to give a little bit of overview, and quite frankly, when I'm presenting on TIF, I usually don't have to have this large of an audience to present to. So I talk about TIF all over the state, so it's nice to have a lot of people in the audience to hear this. But basically, TIF, I'm just going to give a basic overview and then talk a little bit about the Bowling Green program and things because I think it might set the stage for some of the other discussions as we move forward in this particular situation. TIF is tax increment financing, and the basic statute that we're operating under right now in Kentucky was adopted in 2007. And there was an original TIF statute adopted in 2000. The 2007, that actually Bowling Green is used in its Transpark project and some of those other areas and things. But the 2007 statute is what we're currently operating under, and that actually sunsetted all the old provisions on tax increment financing in Kentucky. Really, TIF actually is, I like to make it sound more complicated than it is because I want people to call me, I guess. But in any event, tax increment financing is basically a program where a district may be established by a city or county. And after it's established then, and the incremental increase in taxes that might be generated from this particular district that's established may be used to promote development within the district over time. And in Kentucky, from a local standpoint, the maximum pledge of TIF revenues can be 30 years. And so in that circumstances, the taxes we're talking about are real property taxes and occupational taxes from the local standpoint. And actually in other areas of the state, it's not only the city and county, but actually special districts, if they choose to participate, special taxing districts that might have taxing jurisdiction over those areas, and they also participate in pledge of their revenues. That's not the case in Bowling Green. It's the city and county have agreed to work together. But in other areas of the state, the extension districts, health districts, library, and some of those special taxing districts have also agreed to a pledge of their revenues. Again, the whole concept here, and there's a few terms we're going to utilize under this particular, especially as we're talking about the proposal on the term sheet issue here or later, is the concept of increment. The increment is, quite frankly, is the taxes generated from the district after the TIF district is created and activated minus the base. And that creates the increment. Now, if there is a zero base, there is no increment. If there's a zero or negative, for instance, if the taxes minus the base is 0 or less, there's no increment and there's nothing to pledge. But it's as over time that increment will grow. The base, quite frankly, is the taxes that are generated from that area the calendar year before a TIF district is created. And so in this case, for instance, in Bowling Green, the project we're talking about today, the TIF district is created in 2007. So 2006 is the calendar year, at least for a calculation of the local base. So we're talking about increases in real property taxes, and occupational taxes. And this particular one, the WKU Gateway project that I'll talk about a little bit more in a few minutes, is a pledge of revenues from the city of real property taxes, of your occupational taxes, and also then from the county of real property taxes for a 30-year period. I believe both entities committed 80% of their increment to this particular situation. So what happens when you pledge a particular percentage, in this case of the base is never pledged, or at least most cases it's not pledged. But the increment can be pledged, and again, you can pledge up to 100% of that increment to support projects within the TIF district. In the city's case, in the county's case, they pledged 80%. So when you create, just like when you paid money a few minutes ago over to the authority and authorized that, you basically paid 80% of whatever the increment was. You keep 20% plus the base, and that goes into your general fund. The other 80% in this case goes to the authority, and then they're able to use that to promote projects within the TIF district. In Kentucky, there are two levels of support. And you almost look at two different streams of revenue depending upon the circumstances. All TIF districts will have local tax support. So either city, county, or a combination of city, county, plus special districts. Schools or fire districts may not participate, so it's not a program that any school can participate in at all. And of course, in Bowling Green, special districts didn't participate at all. But in Kentucky, you have two levels of support. First of all, you have the local taxes, real estate taxes, occupational taxes. But certain projects within the TIF district, if they meet certain criteria, can also then receive a pledge of state tax revenues in that case. And in this case, the WKU program did. And if you have a program in this case, in 2007, when the TIF statute was adopted, there were 5 signature TIF districts that were created and approved by the state. And quite frankly, as of today, only 2 of those 5 signature TIF districts have been activated and have achieved minimum capital investment for the recovery of state tax revenue. That's the WKU Gateway project, and then the Louisville Haymarket project in the University of Louisville that was created for its medical center downtown. Most of the others have not moved forward yet for activation. So in that case, you should be proud of the fact that your project is two of the 5 that did move forward with activation. The differences, quite frankly, between the local revenues and state revenues are that the local revenues can be used almost to spend for any type of cost associated with the TIF district. From marketing to actual capital dollars, they can pay for private costs, things like that. But when you apply to the state program, in this case, the city working with the authority, the Warren County Downtown Economic Development Authority, which is your agency under the TIF district, the city applied for and received a pledge of state tax revenues from sales taxes, income taxes for new employees, and real property taxes, and some other corporate taxes in that circumstance. So that's the pledge of revenues from the state. The main difference between the local side and the state side, however, is that when the state monies and what what costs that they can reimburse are different from the local taxes. When you apply to the state will primarily allow you to recover what they call approved public infrastructure costs and financing costs associated with approved public infrastructure costs. So what happens is the state's completely a reimbursement program. Assuming you're able to meet the minimum capital investment, and in this case, the original minimum capital investment was $200 million in capital investment, which was later reduced to $150 million. Once you achieve that within the TIF district for your project, then the state revenues begin to flow to you on an annual basis. But when you apply, what the state's reimbursing back to you, quite frankly, is a portion of those approved public infrastructure costs or the financing costs associated with approved public infrastructure costs. The state will not reimburse with state revenues any cost associated with what we would call private costs associated with the development. Bowling Green is somewhat unique in the way, in 2 areas, quite frankly. One, in the way the TIF revenues are being utilized, and then the second area, the willingness of the government to actually provide more than just, when you issue bonds for projects, instead of supporting the bonds with just a bare increment pledge of revenues that might be generated, in a couple different instances, there's actually been GO pledges where the city, in this case for the ballpark, even agreed to issue general obligation debt. Even on the project we're talking about today, the RAP project and how that's structured, that's really somewhat unusual that the city or the county working together would in some way back what we would call private debt, because the industrial revenue bonds for the RAP situation is a situation where that's in effect private debt, because under the original terms of the deal, once the debt was paid off, that project was going to be transferred to a private entity. So that is somewhat unique and unusual in those two specific areas. One, the willingness of the governments to support the debt issue from, instead of just a bare pledge of incremental revenues, to support that with a GO obligation, which you've done. And then also the concept of supporting the TIF, utilizing paying private costs directly with a debt issuance. In this case, what you've done with the RAP project is agreed to, in effect, be a guarantor of debt to support a private project. I'm not saying that's wrong or bad or whatever. I'm just saying it's unique, and you probably won't see that in other areas. The other thing that I do think, though, that is the model you're utilizing in Bowling Green is a little bit different too, in that once you receive the money back from the state, based upon you're basically asking the state to reimburse you for your approved public infrastructure costs. But what's happened here is that once you receive those monies back, the monies are not being used to necessarily to reimburse the public infrastructure costs. They are being used to reimburse or pay for private costs for development. And again, that's a unique situation in Bowling Green. Most of the time you'll find that when the monies that you're receiving back from the state are tied directly to public infrastructure costs, and they're being used not only to get the reimbursement back from the state, but the use of those funds are being used to pay for those public infrastructure costs. That is a unique in Bowling Green. And so when we're talking about the RAP project today, there are a significant amount of the public infrastructure cost reimbursements that are coming back from the state that's being used to support the RAP, which is a private debt, and also, quite frankly, even on the sublease agreements to reimburse the tenants for their costs. So that's a couple areas. I just wanted to highlight a few things dealing with the TIF in Kentucky. I'll be glad to answer specific questions if you have more later as we get into the actual term sheet. But I wanted to give you a kind of a little overview about TIF in Kentucky, as well as some of the unique things that are happening in Bowling Green relative to that.
Any other questions from the commission for Mr. Parsons? Mr. Febo?
Okay, thank you. What we thought we would do, the City Commission wanted to have a meeting today with the principals involved with this issue of the RAP. That would be the city, the county, and the Chapter 58. We've been working with those two groups for the last 3 months, trying to determine what is the best course of action given the problem that we face. As recently as Sunday, we received a what is known as a term sheet, a solution to the problem. What we'd like to do is we'd like to put the county's latest term sheet up on the board so everybody can see it, and use that as a way to drive discussion about the issue. You will see that the city's last action involves a strikeout. That was our last thing. And the county's alternative proposal was underlined. So Kate, you want to put that up, please? Scott, it's all yours.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what everybody was expecting. First, I want to apologize. Doug Gorman was planning on being here, but he had a personal family emergency that required him to go to the hospital, so I'm standing in on the last minute here. Second, I would like to thank the staff for the time that they have spent over the last, at least, certainly the last 3 months, and particularly over the last 4 weeks, as we have tried to come up with some outline framework for us to go forward in negotiations to figure out a solution for the issues here. Many of the points that are in this are actually from staff ideas as opposed to the counties or the authorities. Second, I want to emphasize at this point the nature of this as being really in a contingent agreement. This is only one of 4 legs of an ultimate deal. Nothing's going to happen in terms of what's in this term sheet unless the county can reach an agreement with the Mills Family Realty, reach an agreement with some third party as to the operation of the project, be that Manhattan Capital or whoever, and reaching an agreement with the contractors who have placed liens on the project. Unless all 4 parts of this deal comes together, there is no deal. And that includes even the discussions here today. So to a large extent, this is even preliminary as between the county and the city. What we do need is some indication from the commission that the general framework that's being discussed is acceptable. Somebody has to take the lead in the negotiations with the parties. For a while, it was kind of the city taking the lead. Now, under this framework, we're kind of reversing the roles, but we need to know as we go forward and try to negotiate with the parties that generally there's an understanding and that we don't come back here with few weeks and somebody pulls the legs out from underneath us. This is going to be hard enough to put together as it is, so we want to at least get some assent, some feedback so that we can really begin having those discussions. Right now, any discussions we've had are preliminary, but because there are negotiations and because there is a chance that there may be litigation arising from this, we're not prepared to have any discussions today regarding those matters. I think that's something that could be discussed in closed session, but frankly, I've advised my clients not to have any comment regarding pending negotiations or any issues, claims, or defenses, and certainly will not be discussing that in the media as well. I wasn't sure what draft y'all would have before you today.
We took your latest draft from Sunday and we combined it with our latest draft.
Okay.
And I think it'd be helpful for the commission and for everybody here just to give a macro overview of each of the sub-components, then we can chat either between us and the city commission over the elements if they're problematic.
After we got the invitation Thursday, I guess y'all met closed session on Thursday and discussed what would have been the county's proposal as of that time. Friday morning, we got a similar marked up copy from the staff making their proposed changes. So over the weekend, we tried to respond to the changes that y'all had made Friday morning to our proposal. I understand that even this morning, there have been discussions with the county's financial advisor and some members of the staff. I've not been briefed on those, so I'm not sure what has been discussed and if there's things that have been clarified or not. Recognize that still plenty of detail left to be discussed in some language, but I think at this point we're probably just talking about detail and language issues. Generally, the highlights would be that there would be a new $30 million bond issued. The city would issue a GO lease obligation for the parking garage, with the county agreeing to come up with a legally enforceable agreement whereby the county would assure the city that there would be no loss from this project. In consideration, the agreement provides that certain assets would be transferred to the county, particularly undeveloped piece of real estate, which we've agreed to share, or the county has agreed to share any potential sales proceeds 50-50, but balance of that the county would receive would then go to debt service.
Scott, would you prefer to give an overview of the whole proposal, or would you like to go A, B, C, and have the commission ask questions?
Now, we're only prepared, I guess, to talk about the overview. We weren't prepared to talk about A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
Since all of that still is for discussion purposes, and we consider it a draft, thought it was a little premature to talk about any sort of details. We were here just to talk about the concept.
Is that concept subject to questions by us?
Depends on the nature of the question. I mean, again, I don't want to get involved in matters that are subject to negotiation with other parties.
No, we wouldn't talk about that.
And nor did I necessarily think that we were here to negotiate the deal in this context. So we just wanted to kind of outline the overall framework of the deal just so we can get some comment and then the rest of it be worked out at staff level. As I said, there would be some reallocation of assets, reallocation of the TIF revenue so that money would be available for debt service. As you're aware, the county has agreed that whatever excess at the end of the bond is going to be then refunded or shared 50-50 back to the city. And again, that whatever negotiations we have with the other parties would be brought back. We're asking the city to allow us to negotiate, subject to there not being any sort of negative impact to the city financially as a result of the negotiations we undertake with the other parties. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this is contingent upon us getting the other three parts of this deal worked together. If something else falls apart, then unfortunately all of this is for naught, and the relationship of the parties won't need to change.
Scott,
I don't know
when
how
you
soon
say-
that'll happen.
Scott, when you say negotiate, are you talking about with Catsaw subcontract or contractors?
Everybody.
What are we talking about?
Talking about Mills Family Realty, which is the tenant with the lease of the county. Talking about Alliance, I'm talking about the subcontractors, potentially Mr. Katzoff and his company, or some other party that may come forward. Right now, he's the only deal as a potential new operator, but if there's something out there, we're not certainly precluding looking at. But as of right now, he has option A and we don't have an option B, but we would like to have option B.
But a part of that negotiation would be that you representing Chapter 58 and the county will have to come back to the city for us to approve
Yes.
those agreements or that agreement.
Well, we're asking you to allow us to negotiate and allow us to work out what we believe is the best deal for the taxpayers to resolve this situation. We're going to bring it back to let you look at it to make sure it does not have a negative financial impact. We're not expecting you to look then back over our shoulders and renegotiate the terms of the deal. So we just want to know that we can go forward and have those negotiations. Otherwise, I guess it's the city that's going to need to take the lead and undertake all of this. But one of us has got to step out and address the issues. And we're, under this, proposing that it would be the county and the authority do that. So when we do bring it back, and obviously there's be a lot of the TIF documents will have to be worked on by Mr. Parsons, Mr. Harmon, myself, and Amy to adjust the pre-existing revenue sharing agreements and the interlocal agreements to reflect many of the details here. Those agreements obviously will have to be brought back for your approval, as they will have to go to fiscal court. To the extent then that the agreements that are anticipated in this term sheet will ultimately need city approval. Those will have to come back as well. We just need to know going forward that we've got a framework in which we can negotiate.
Scott, I thought that the city commission had pretty much given authority before and said it was okay to go ahead and start negotiating with Cats Off. That's what we were asked to do early
Right.
on. But we have a duty, a fiduciary duty to the citizens of Bowling Green to approve this term sheet as well. And we want to do that before we go further. We want to make sure that the citizens of Bowling Green are adequately protected in whatever is done.
I understand.
And I think that's just being fair.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I
we've
think
gone
that's
back
why.
and- We've gone back and forth on this thing 2 or 3 times,
More than that.
and, you know, we're negotiating here again.
Yeah, that's why I thought to some extent this might have been even premature since, as of 12:30 this morning, I think there's still conversations going on over the details of this. I don't think the overall framework and concept of this, I think it actually originated in a conversation the mayor had with Judge Buchanan sometime in late February, but the overall concept, I don't think has changed any in any of the drafts. All that we've worked on is details and language.
But we
But
do
it's-
need to nail the details down.
Yes, yeah, I would agree, but like I say, I'm not privy to what discussions the staff's had this morning over that, so
Staff
I'm
has
not
had,
prepared to speak to
nothing
those.
but preliminary discussions about points that neither one of us could agree on. It was just clarifying of numbers between 2 accountants. We do have a question. It's under the macro thesis of the deal. Under B, you need us to, under A, you need us to issue a $30 million lease, correct?
Correct,
Okay. Well, we need you to guarantee that.
correct. Yeah, I think it provides a legally enforceable agreement.
What we'd like to know, if now or shortly after now, what structure are you going to plan to indemnify the county and taxpayers? Would that be a GO backing, an annual renewable lease tied to the bond, an interlocal agreement with a letter of credit, or a revenue sharing pledge agreement? Has any thought been given to how we will be indemnified?
I'm not sure. I'm not part of those discussions.
Who would know that?
I would assume maybe the county judge and the financial consultants.
Okay.
And I think some of those things that the city manager, and to concur with what Rick said a few minutes ago, I've received calls as one of the city commissioners here to indicate that everything is the city of Bowling Green's fault in this negotiation, especially when there are several parties during the negotiation. And I'm not saying Scott Backer did that.
No, I understand. I was just thinking, somebody told me the day that contractors found dead bodies in the walls down there at the building. So I think you can find anything you want out on the street right now about this.
Yes, but, part of negotiations, the way I understand it is that somewhere along the line, and the end result is everyone walks away thinking they have gotten a little something to what they're asking for. And that's what we want to do as a city commission. And all of us, I think, wants to do what is best for all of the citizens of the city of Bowling Green. And some of the investors in this project are citizens of the city of Bowling Green. But we have to make sure that whatever we do, whether the city sells $30 million in bonds, we're taken care of, we the citizens that is. And that's our part of the negotiation, our part of hopefully a contractual agreement in the end, is that all of us, including the city of Bowling Green and the administrative staff and the city commission, we walk away feeling good with what we have presented as our part. And all of us want contractors to be paid. One of my best friends in the world is back there. You know, hell, I want him to be paid. He's a good man, runs a good company. So somewhere along the line, all of us want the same thing.
I would agree with that. We all do want the same thing and want this. But as I learned many years ago as a young lawyer, if everybody walks away happy, it's not a good settlement. So not everybody's going to get everything they want. If we can achieve that, well, I'm going to ask for a bonus at the end of the day. But
I said,
you know, we've got a long way to put all of this
I said
together.
a little something. I didn't say everything they
Everything.
wanted. I
Right.
said a little something.
Well, like it or not, we are where we are on this thing. And we know we need to reach some sort of an agreement. I'm just trying to come up with, how are we going to come up with that agreement? We keep, you know, if we keep bouncing back and forth with changes like this, we need to get together somewhere and decide on the individual items and be done with this.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought, that whether it was in this context or at least something back from the staff level is what that we would be getting, is that the general framework, the general concepts are in fact acceptable, and that this commission was comfortable with the county stepping forward to begin having negotiations with all of those parties. We recognize that there are a lot of details and language left, but somebody needs to follow up with the mills. Somebody needs to follow up with the contractors immediately, if not last week or 4 weeks ago. But we really can't have much more than some initial discussions with everybody until we at least know that the high points of this proposal will be acceptable and that we're authorized to go forward with those negotiations. And because if you don't like this and you want your lawyers to take the lead on all this and put together some other deal, that's certainly y'all's prerogative. I mean, if you think that the city ought to issue new bonds and address all of this, you know, that's fine. But I didn't think that's what we were all have been discussing the last 30, 45 days. So we're just kind of looking for the, yeah, we're good. Go forward and see if you can put this together, and then let us bring it back when we have the deal worked out. But until there is at least an agreement and consent on the high points of this, we're not comfortable going forward and making any sort of representations of negotiations that, yes, we can do that, no, we cannot do that, you know, until we have, you know, at least some signal from this body that we're authorized to have those negotiations.
Yes, ma'am.
Scott, what concerns me is if we give you the approval today to go forward, what do we as a commission do if you come back to us after you've made deals with all the parties involved and you've added highlights to this or you've taken them away? Where are we then as a commission?
Well, I'm not sure what highlights or things that will we be adding as part of those discussions, but I guess if we came back with something that said, you know, I need a bond level more than what we've talked about in these term sheets, or now the county's not going to be able to come up with the legally enforceable agreement for some reason, or, you know, the agreement is that we've negotiated has a negative financial impact to the city. You know, if that's the case, then there is no deal, and it all falls.
Thank you.
I mean, so that's what we're looking for, is within that box. You know, can we go negotiate?
Can I ask what those high points are? The first one appears to be it's a $30 million bond issue rather than the 25.5 with 1.5 debt reserve fund. Could you tell us what that extra money is requested for?
Well, no, I don't want entirely, because that's going to impact how I negotiate with some of the other parties.
Okay.
But you may be asking us for more money in the selling of our bonds.
You know, if we did, then there's no deal. I mean, that's what the county's proposal is. If we can't get it put together at that debt level, county can't do it anyway. So there's no coming back and saying, guys, we missed it, we need 33. That's not the proposal we're asking for.
So you are asking us to vote on this proposal right here? That won't change moving forward?
Yeah, no, I guess if that's what we need to do. I mean, again, we didn't ask for this meeting, we're here at your invitation, so if that's what needs to happen, is a vote of the general guidelines, subject to, at staff level, the details being ironed out and language being corrected. But yeah, I guess in the highlights here, at least, is what we're looking for.
But as the mayor just asked, so you are asking us in aid to sell $30 million in bonds.
No, I guess the county would be, if I understand, the county's going to issue it. You're just doing a geo obligation on the lease that the county's going to guarantee there will be no loss on. Right. I looked to the county attorney to make sure that I had that correct.
But we don't know what the county is going to give us when we sell.
As far as a legally enforceable agreement, I think that's obviously the state debt officer is going to weigh in on that. But if there is no legally enforceable agreement, again, then there is no agreement, no deal. That's one of the things we got for agreeing that has to be delivered back to you for final approval.
There's been no discussion of what that could be, the form of that? Because that's very germane to us moving forward.
But my role when I got involved in this has just been with Chapter 58 and dealing with this, so I can't say what's been discussed at the county level.
It seems one of the highlights is the participation of the city and equal representation on the TIF board. You know, when I first made the global proposal, it was that the city was stepping out of it, that only the TIF funds were going to go to that. We would give up our membership, our subdeveloper approvals, and all that sort of thing, and let the county run the TIF and make whatever deals necessary. But now it looks like we're coming back and asking for, if I may not be reading this correctly, 37 blocks worth of the base, which is general fund money, but we don't get to have equal representation on the board at that point. That seems problematic from our standpoint.
Well, part of that was in response to the fact that by statute, it is a county organization. The county must maintain structural and organizational control, and only the county can appoint members to the Chapter 58. Now, Judge Buchanan has agreed to appoint Jeff and has indicated that he would appoint one of the other commissioners to that, but to maintain compliance with statute, the county has to maintain control of the Chapter 58.
Can you give me the statute on that, Suzanne?
Are you saying there's no requirement for the judge to appoint?
No, in fact, the statute specifically requires that only the judge can appoint members to the board of the Chapter 58. And by statute, only the county has.
In our term sheet, we could have an item in the term sheet that says, as he appoints, appropriately, he would appoint a staff member and a commissioner.
Well, I think the original proposal that it would be a 2-and-2 appointment. And we have gone back and left it at the current makeup, but have agreed that Jeff would serve as kind of the eyes of the city as member of that board. But
We kind of envision Jeff as being the eyes for the whole board.
certainly, I
City
mean,
and
there's
right.
no
Yeah.
opposition to him participating in that. In fact, he's welcome. He's been invaluable in these discussions.
Was that as a voting member? I missed that part.
Yes, he'd be one of the 5 voting members.
Yes,
He
sir.
would, in essence, somehow we would have to remove one of the other city-nominated members and replace with him.
Yes, sir.
Kate, can you go to page 2, please? Let's see, your item F. No? Let's see, keep going. Oh, wait a second. There we go, right there, item F. The city agrees to revise the revenue sharing agreement to convey all interest in state and local TIF revenues to the county beginning in 2014. Our language had it going, not a problem with that, with the money going over, but what it was used for. We had it going for debt. For some reason, our need or requirement, or the commission's requirement to help pay the debt was taken out. Do we misinterpret that, or do you plan to have the county have carte blanche use of those funds?
I can't speak to that. I'm not why that was part of the original deal by the proposal from the county, but I think that had been the intent of the county the entire time.
To use it as debt?
No.
Now, I think that was an open question, but that was something they were discussing and trying to iron out, so maybe they know from discussions this morning with Keith Brock what that was used for.
What would be the purpose of taking that out? Why would the monies not be used for debt?
Again, you're asking something that I'm not.
We did talk to, Jeff and I talked to Keith this morning, and according to him, like it's his understanding from the beginning and these were, we used the words uncommitted blocks, but it's the blue-green blocks that the city gets TIF money for now. I guess kind of like the money today. I think according to Keith, he thought it was always understood that the money from those blocks would be just made available to county for TIF-related purposes, but not necessarily for debt on the Block 6 RAP. I think we always understood that all the city's pledged money would be used for debt payment on the Block 6 RAP. Maybe a miscommunication here, or way we're calling this one, but according to Keith, that was their position, that's why they took this out. They don't want it in this agreement that money's pledged to Block 6 RAP. I guess they want to be able to use it for whatever TIF-related purposes that the county chooses to use it for.
Who
I
is
think that's
Keith?
fair to say. I think what they're really aiming at here
You got a microphone, Jim?
is working.
Okay.
This is a kind of a fundamental issue here to the agreement, and whether the board agrees to this or not is an issue. I think that specific provision really relates to the fact that in the event you approve it as it's written, is that then the county is really responsible then for the increment and determining how the increment's used for the life of the TIF. That's really, that in that circumstance. So that's an important issue for it's kind of, so that's kind of fundamental in the event that basically the city would not have a role, quite frankly, in determining how those future incremental revenues are utilized for projects. They could be used for debt, or they could be used for other projects within the TIF district. Whatever we agree to, if you would agree to that provision, then there clearly needs to be provisions added in that says that notwithstanding, they still have to be spent in accordance with the TIF Act and some of those things. But this is a fundamental shift that a lot of the normal approvals where the city and the county are jointly involved in making decisions and how the increments spent in accordance with working with the authority, this would take the city out of that role. And so that I just want to make you real clear. That's really, I think, what that particular provision's aiming at. If I'm mischaracterize that, please let me know. So, and so what we had tried to add back into that is that if we agree to that, we would like it to be committed back to the debt. But it is a fundamental issue that the board would have to understand. I just want to make you real clear on what they're talking about there.
So Scott, I'm getting a little confused here. So, so is someone out there that needed to have been talking to you before you got here today, you and Amy?
Well,
that-
certainly I had anticipated until the emergency come up that Mr. Gorman was going to be here speaking, and he would have a lot more detail. So I am a last minute substitute. Now, I've been involved in some of the wordsmithing of this over the time, but the policy decisions behind it or why they were doing some, I haven't been necessarily
I'm
part of
not
those
trying to
discussions.
put you on the
no,
spot.
that's just why and I don't want to be intentionally evasive, but I've learned long ago that sometimes I don't know what I don't know, so I'm not going to speak when I should.
You know, it appears to me that there's a need for another meeting with somebody. I mean, we're sitting here after meeting, hell, I don't know how many times this year pertaining to this project, and we still are not in a position where we can talk with anyone about any of these items that are listed up here. If the Chapter 58 is running a part of the show, then Chapter 58 people need to be here as part of this discussion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let me try to add some things here. We were told, or I think, Scott, you mentioned to Gene that we needed to call Keith Brock, the county's financial officer, because he made some recommendations to some language. So the only things we talked to him about this morning was this item here that Kevin just mentioned, the new F, and where that money was going to be, what it was going to be used for. Gene just explained that. The only other thing we discussed with him this morning was the language that he had added in items. There's several different ones. One is H
and J.
Where he added, so long as the calculations do not result in a negative base. We tried to clarify what that meant because base is base. So we talked about that with him. What we came up with there is he just didn't want us to compare like a 12-month base to someone that moves in, say in November or December, that's an existing entity in the city, where we didn't compare a 12-month amount to a 2-month amount. And I said, we don't do that anyway. And I said, you know, there's really no adjustment to the base. The base is their prior year numbers. That's in our ordinance. We can't, I mean, we would have to amend our ordinance. So we always take their prior year numbers. Sometimes their following year they may slip a little bit or they may grow a little bit. But that's the only way we can do it. He didn't have anything else to offer on another alternative method of doing it that way. So
Okay.
He said he would get back with you about tweaking that language, and we talked to him about 9 o'clock this morning. So here we are. I mean, that's the only things we talked to him about this morning. And the only other, well, there's one more, and that's in item M or item L, and that was the language he added about remaining upon repayment in full of the new bonds, all excess funds from the reallocation of TIF revenues as provided, paragraphs I, J, and K of this term sheet, and remaining after the recoupment of all expenses. That was added. We didn't know what expenses would be there 20 years from now that would have to be recouped and not be able to be divided equally between the city and the county. So that was the other question we asked him. He really wasn't sure. did he have any?
I don't know much.
Really didn't
Yeah,
have
I mean,
anything?
I can't imagine what in the future there would be. I think it was more of a recoupment for whatever out-of-pocket the county might have
Like
on
now.
an upfront basis,
Now.
basis, yes.
Yeah.
But
So,
other than that, I'm not sure what would go in that other than,
recoupment of like
Recoupment.
general fund monies that may or may not
well,
be
whatever
needed?
expenses are going to be involved in getting this,
Okay.
maybe accounting fees, we may have some engineering costs. I mean, I can't imagine, though,
So
any sort of significant
that's the only thing
amount,
we just,
but that would seem to be something that, we can detail in the next draft and
yeah.
limit that or detail exactly what that might be.
Yes, sir.
To add to what Jeff said, since we need to get this project off dead center, if you're asking what staff is concerned about, item B, Kate, can you go back to the first sheet, please? It's all about indemnification. We have to make sure if we're going to issue or be involved with a $30 million general obligation, that means a full faith and credit of city taxpayers is at risk. We already have that responsibility for the ballpark. So this is very critical. It's the essential piece. And what we're interested in hearing now, before we even go down the road of moral hazard, is what is the county willing to offer in terms of various forms of indemnification for the city doing a geo lease. That could range from as strict as a geo lease back up by the county to something less. But we want to make sure that's enforceable and it has with it some pain if it's broken, because that's why we're here today, because if we don't live up to the original agreement, we will either be faced with default or have to pay for a building that isn't finished. Item F is an issue especially close to the Commission's heart about having the sharing of its view on a 4-4 board. You can add your comments here, but we found that mostly an issue of concern to the Commission. Mindful, all these issues have been vetted numerous times with numerous parties from the county. F, we're very concerned about that. From the point of view, did the City Commission know that Chapter 58 and the county believe that they can use the money we give them any way they want and not for debt? From a staff point of view, we didn't know that. We've been involved for at least a handful of meetings. Item H is a red one, wasn't problematic. We didn't even know if it was germane. J was, again, not problematic. Item L was problematic because we don't know what this expenses are, and that's a word to move, could be used to move what could be revenue sharing to cover something else. So we wanted to make sure that you knew these items. Again, item F, that they can use the TIF revenues for whatever TIF function other than debt. The board composition, and most critical to us was indemnification, and when, how, because we don't want to be involved in a situation in which we have to act because there was a misunderstanding about how we were going to be indemnified. Jeff, Gene, you want to add to that? Jim?
Yeah, I did speak to Keith Brock just prior to this meeting with the county's fiscal agent again about the structure of the indemnification, how this is going to be dealt with. They don't have an answer to that question, and it's not. And I understand, that is critical. The wording, I think, is okay, but that we have, quite frankly, is it does give us the ability to approve that. The concern that we have, quite frankly, is that we don't want them to move so far down the road on these other issues that issue's held to the end, and then we have a rush to review it, because we have to, bond counsel's got to review that and things like that. There are some constitutional limitations on direct indemnifications that we need to be aware of and cognizant of. and to make sure that those are met. There may have to be state local debt officer approval, probably will be if it's a debt situation. That's going to take some time to put together. So that structure, though, is pretty critical. We don't know what it is at this particular point, but that is going to be critical. I will point out to you also, that provision is the most, except that some of these other issues are policy related. That provision in the agreement, combined with your obligation to issue a GO lease, are the two most important issues in that. And the other side of the coin is the board simply has to be willing, if it doesn't get what it needs there to match its GO lease commitment, you have to be willing to say no. This doesn't, and if your bond counsel comes back and said, this is not a full agreement like we intended, it's not legally enforceable, you've just got to understand, because otherwise this term sheet doesn't mean anything if you're not willing to say no, you didn't match it and we're not going to go forward.
Jason? We have a lot of people in the audience, Scott, and they're all concerned about the people from Rise, about their jobs, the subcontractors about their payments. Why are we here? How did we get here?
I'm not prepared to say. I think that's going to impact the other issues. Obviously, this has been something that, from looking at emails and letters, the city has been concerned about and working on now for approaching a year. So this has been a long-standing, brewing, bubbling thing that has finally kind of just bubbled out of control.
Well, it's just that a lot of the people in this room think that the city is keeping something from happening
No,
for
I
a
don't think
particular
this,
reason.
yeah, I mean, if that's, if
we need
that's
to determine what happened so that we can move forward.
If everybody's thinking the city is keeping anything from happening, I'll dispel that right now. No, I mean, we have, like I've said, we've got 5 different parties. We got the county and authority, we got the city, we've got maybe Mr. Katzoff or somebody in that position, we got the mills, we got the contractors, all of which I was thinking everybody's going to want the best deal possible. And, this deal on the front end was difficult enough to put together. Tearing the old deal down and putting together a new deal is much harder. City manager quickly starting to shake his head. Yes, I mean,
Jim will tell you how far we've come in
Yes.
3 months. We're down to some seminal issues where the public needs to know them and we need to make decisions on them.
yeah. But those are issues just relating to the relationship going forward of the 5 parties. We'll still, like I say, have to get the rest of them together before we actually have, hopefully, a workable solution.
Well, I think it's the desire of everybody on this commission to get to a solution, and we've been trying to get there. And we just need to know what we need to do to get this language where it needs to be, to get the deal done, and to protect the citizens of Bowling Green. So where do we go from here?
I think I'm no municipal law expert, and I'll defer to Gene as to how the best way to do that. But frankly, what I would like to see is a vote as to the high points of this term sheet. The bond, the legally enforceable agreement from the county, and allow the staff to work out the whatever remaining details there are, with the idea that all of this will ultimately come back for final approval, but at least give us enough of an indication so we can start talking about with the parties, how do we get these restaurants back in operation and get these people employed? How do we address the contractor claims? What do we have to do? Because we can't even begin having those conversations unless the county knows it's got a framework upon which to build the rest of the deals. Until we get that information or that weekend me the right way if you don't want to vote on it, but at least tell me that, we can go forward and try to work the rest of it out.
And I'm not fussing at you, Scott, because this is the argument that has been presented all along, is that we have to come to a deal so they can get their job back or get their employers paid. I don't remember signing something that said we were to pay somebody else's bills or to make sure somebody got hired in the agreement. That's where the frustration is. Now, at this point, we're being asked, we already doubled down on this thing once when we went from 22 to 27 million, and now we're being asked to double down again with a new guy.
I think the county's is asking that, saying it will back that.
Well, except
Are they?
that
That's what the purpose of the legally enforceable agreement that Mr. Febokes keeps saying he wants to know how we're going to do that. But without that, then there is no agreement.
Except that at this point, what we were contributing to the project does not cost the city anything at all. TIF
Not
money
yet.
is what is new money coming into the project. The base is what we were getting before TIF ever started, and that's what we used to run city government on. And now it's not just TIF, it's our general fund. And that affects the services that we can provide. And our dilemma is multifold, just as the counties and the TIF organization is. I don't know whether to read this or not. I've written a big long statement to read, but I don't want to, as we deliberate here, only two of us have been here since the beginning, and might as well. This will be a minute if you want to sit down.
Mayor, can I
Yes,
make
sir.
one statement?
Yeah.
If you're interested in what staff, again, feels important, I don't think we can do anything until we nail down both sides B. That is our indemnification. We don't want this moral hazard where the boat's going over the waterfall, and if we don't sign, we're the bad guy.
We
We need to know now what they're going to give us.
We can't give up all these other gives if we don't have B. So it's kind of the trade-off.
So, I'm sorry.
Okay. If y'all bear with me, it's going to take a minute. In the spring of 2007, the city was approached by Warren County and others who had a desire to create a tax increment financing district for downtown redevelopment. Although TIFs were common in Kentucky, new state legislation had been passed that allowed TIFs to capture 80% of the state revenue that now go to Frankfort for local use. The vision to advance the goal of redeveloping an area defined as blighted, we believed, a valid use of that incremental tax revenue. In the beginning, some of us were apprehensive in moving forward because the Warren County Downtown Economic Development Authority's concept was not fully in accord with what state law envisioned. What state law contemplated was that one master developer would create a single signature development, a coordinated destination to attract additional businesses and residents to the area. The local concept was more of a piecemeal approach, and that didn't mean it wouldn't work. It would just take greater coordinated effort. But it would be a monumental task to meet the signature TIF status threshold of bringing $200 million in new construction. Since we believe that failure to meet the goal would be laid at the doorsteps of City Hall, and the passion for the project really lied with Warren County government, we declined to take the lead with the project. The city did, however, agree to participate in the TIF by providing 80% of the new revenue and logistics support as needed. Early on, those advocating for the TIF wanted the city to build a minor league baseball park. It would have required the city to issue $32 million in general obligation bonds to build it. The Board of Commissioners objected, and the original TIF document actually contained bold capital letters explaining that the city's TIF involvement would not include general fund dollars. Within a few months, however, the majority of the commission changed their minds and issued bonds for a $25 million baseball park. It should be noted that Commissioner Denning and I, who were the only ones here at the time, we voted no. But after losing the vote, I personally went to those advocating for the ballpark and gave my support to make it successful. As the TIF developed, our partners continued to find ways to make it work, even in tough circumstances. We applaud the outstanding result of what has occurred. Both ends of the TIF have seen wonderful new opportunities for jobs and housing, plus the renewed interest in downtown has created a new vitality. We want everyone to know how grateful we are for the hard work and efforts of those involved, especially those who have not made any money and volunteered their time. As interest in Block 6, which is the baseball park, the garage, and the wrap, as it did not appear in the midst of the recession, the city was approached by our partners with a proposition of backstopping an industrial revenue bond with proceeds from a partial lease on the parking garage. We were told that our two largest high-tech firms were looking to relocate out of state. They believed keeping these two entities and placing them in what is now called the wrap building would fill a need for young professionals to live and work downtown. The pro forma and revenue projections provided information which indicated that not only were sufficient funds available to cover the wrap bond payments, but also provided a surplus, which would be available to the city to cover part of the $1.6 million annual bond payments for the ballpark. Plus, should any funds ever be required to be paid by the city, they would be returned at the end of the bond before the wrap could be transferred to another owner. Although it was an unusual deal, the numbers appeared to work. A short time later, our partners in the deal indicated they had a unique concept that they thought would enhance the project and the other entertainment venues in the TIF. A courtyard, restaurant, walking mall area suggested by a consultant from Chicago who had experience with the concept was brought in to guide the program. There was insufficient initial funding to create the project due to problems discovered with building design, which led to unforeseen expenses. So they asked the city about access to additional TIF funding. The city declined, but after reviewing the data, offered to allow an increase in the bonded amount by $5 million to create the turnkey destination point and completely finish the wrap project. The projection still provided a surplus available to the city for its ballpark bonds, but at a much smaller rate. Due to rumors of a certain bankrupt businessman's involvement in the project, I held discussions with the members of the wrap owners group and their attorney. Those comments included, I can't tell you who you can hire or who to go into business with, but if the bankrupt businessman is involved, there are no votes to go forward. We were assured that he was not involved. Not wanting to go around behind anyone's back, I also approached that particular businessman and gave him the same information. Also, city staff, members of the wrap owners group, and their attorney, another commissioner, and I met formally to confirm many of the parameters of the backing of the additional bonds. Again, at that meeting, the subject of the involvement of the bankrupt businessman was approached, and the city was assured by members of the wrap owners group that he was not involved. A few months later, one of the commissioners heard that this particular businessman was hiring those who worked at the proposed restaurant. We asked for a meeting and indeed met with the TIF authority, the wrap owners group, and their attorney, and the bankrupt businessman. When asked about the situation and whether he was involved, the bankrupt businessman interjected of course he was involved, and involved to the point of selecting plates and napkins. All of our partners in the room vigorously challenged questioning the involvement of this particular businessman. They claimed it was simply a misunderstanding on my part and that everyone knew that the bankrupt businessman was going to be involved from the beginning, but not actually as an owner. It was clear from the wrap owners' comments that no effort would be made to align their behavior with their previous statements, so I read from prepared notes. I stated that I no longer considered them to be trustworthy partners. I further explained that the city would continue to be a trustworthy partner and would honor our commitment to the letter. I further stated that since they did not appear to be trustworthy, they would be required to show exhaustive documentation for any request covering a shortage in bond payments. I further stated that any request should not be made to members of the Board of Commissioners, but to city staff, and only after city staff was satisfied with the commission consider the request. And after the meeting, I personally informed other members of the TIF authority and the master developer of the meeting. In January of 2014, the city's financial officer discovered some unusual fund transfers and immediately raised red flags. When questions were asked, the only answers given were that the agreements permitted the questionable activity. When unsupported bond fund draws were made a little later, city officials demanded information. When pressed further, claims of personal animosity for the previous incident of being untruthful about the involvement of the bankrupt businessmen were raised, and requests for information were ignored. Only when a letter challenging the use of the bond proceeds sent by the Board of Commissioners to the TIF authority was consideration given to the city's concerns. During this time, city staff discovered changes to the operating agreements. The original agreement contained protections for the city against unreasonable financial exposure and delineated exactly where revenue generated from the project may be used in accordance with the industrial revenue bond statutes. We believe that the agreement as it was originally presented to be fair and reasonable. The city was not a signatory to the agreement. Only the master developer, the TIF authority, and the family operating the REP building were required to sign. However, between the time the agreement was presented to the city as an inducement to vote for the additional $5 million in bonds and the time it was signed by our partners, the document had been changed. Those changes occurred without notifying the city of those clearly significant alterations. Further, those changes began a cascade of document alterations that resulted in language being inserted which appear to violate the industrial revenue bond statutes. Those laws required IRB funds to be only used for the construction of the building and related expenses. It was never contemplated in the law that IRBs could be used for business operations. Only the most tortured and fraudulent use of the terms could these funds be used to run a restaurant and be called tenant improvements. There appeared to be a breakdown in financial oversight of the project. So where are we now? It appears that approximately $2 million of bond proceeds were spent in violation of the bond revenue statute, and over $1 million of the TIF funds were used in violation of contractual agreements. What's the city done? Over the past several months, city staff and other officials have been working diligently to discover this problem and issues. We even hired a noted bond attorney, a TIF attorney, to look into the situation. The challenge has been to address equally valid goals. That of salvaging a particular failing project without allowing it to overshadow accountability in the misuse of funds, now expected to be covered by taxpayer dollars. Several proposals have been discussed with all involved. Some members of the Board of Commissioners have pushed for a legal resolution of the missing funds so that moving forward the project may proceed. Our partners have a desire to move forward with the project and address accountability at some later date. The agreement voted on here today is the closest, I think, that all parties have been able to craft. And although my colleagues may have a different opinion of the best route to proceed, it seems that though two competing values come into play. One is to find the least expensive route and pursue it. This keeps the loss in taxpayer funds at a minimum. And the other is legal principle. Do we allow those who have taken funds in violation of the law and other agreements to walk away from legal action in order to avoid the cost, time, and effort of pursuing the legal process? We've listened to numerous lawyers and their opinions on this subject. They say this particular resolution probably does not violate the law, nor will it be likely to be considered a criminal act. But I keep in mind that these lawyers are representing other interests, that of creditors and other parties. In fact, the city's attorney and outside counsel have made the same qualified statements, but they represent the city as an entity, not individual members of the body. And I'm unconvinced the legality of the resolution, and my opinion has not changed since the discovery of the use of bond proceeds. I cannot see how it can be legal for the city to use public money to cover what appears to be an inappropriate use of funds or illegal without concurrent legal action taken against the parties who appear to have violated the statutes. So with regard to this particular resolution, I applaud my colleagues for the determined focus to try and address the situation with as little exposure to the general fund as possible, and I will support the majority of the commission in its decision, even if it's different from mine. Any other comments or questions? You're saying, Mr. Febo, that you don't want us to vote on anything today?
I don't think Scott has intimated that.
I think he's looking for something.
I think he's looking for what, I don't want to speak for you,
No, go
especially
ahead.
being a lawyer.
You're doing fine.
That he wants to know where we have harmony of agreement and what issues are outstanding.
How can we do that without voting on something?
I think
that
it's
correct?
appropriate to vote on, the overall concept, like I said, subject to whatever language or details the staff has to work out. The high points, including providing the legally enforceable agreement that is a linchpin. Well,
The highlight.
obviously, y'all can say no, get that before you vote and come back, but vote that way or vote to approve something so we can go on.
Let's make sure we all understand what highlights we're voting on, because I think it's important for us all to know we're on the same page. $30 million in bonds, that's an important issue.
Yes.
That's what you're asking us to do. No more ever, right?
Correct.
Okay. The lease commitment, general obligation lease commitment,
Correct.
Now, Mayor, you were talking about
B.
things that you want him to,
Hey, we're just hitting the highlights of what he thinks are important and what we think are important.
So that's A and B.
A and B, best efforts, legally enforceable contract.
Well, no, make sure we say this right. A legally enforceable contract, we're just going to use our best efforts to get it to you as quickly as we can. The original draft had a 3-week deadline. We just didn't know if we can meet the 3-week deadline. We'd say we'll move as fast as we can to get it to you with our best efforts. But the legally enforceable agreement is the high point.
Okay.
That's part of that, not a best efforts to get that. That's,
I understand, yes, ma'am.
Before we go forward, on B, just so I understand, Jeff and Jean, what is underlined is what Keith Brock suggested,
Yes, and what's taken
And-
out is what we had before.
and what they struck out is
Yeah.
what we had.
And I'm not sure we have any objections. I mean, everybody's in a hurry to get this thing moving, so that's why we kind of put in some time frames to keep it moving. I think they think 3 weeks is unreasonable. So I think we're okay with this language.
I'm personally concerned about the nature of the indemnification. There's a big difference between if they issue a GO lease from the county. In other words, the full faith and credit of the county is backstopping their commitment to us. That's the highest level. Then there's much less level if they don't fulfill the agreement, there isn't as much penalty. I mean, you are adding $30 million of GO commitment, general obligation, general fund commitment to this company. We need to have at least identified and be comfortable before we sign off or move forward or give a wink and a nod about what we're getting in return, at least in my opinion.
But I'm confused. This hasn't changed, except for this red part. We all had basically agreed to this beforehand,
This language,
except for
yes.
this red. Okay.
I think we understood, though, that today we were going to understand exactly what that was.
I was hoping we would get that. That
Right.
was the idea of
Right.
having this meeting.
That's what
And
this
if you're
was for.
comfortable with the still somewhat vague nature of it, I'm not, personally.
Well, this is not a final vote on
Right.
whatever that is either. It's going to come back to us, right?
Right.
right, within the confines of the high points here, yes, correct.
But we got to be
You know,
willing to
subject
say
to-
no.
At the whatever the final agreement, you would have to be satisfied, and your council would have to be satisfied that whatever agreement the county comes up with is a legally enforceable agreement, and that you would have opinion of council accordingly, or we would expect that you would not approve that per the
Now,
time sheet.
This particular document, it hasn't really changed a lot from a couple weeks ago when folks sat down to actually sign.
No, I don't think that it has. I mean, you see, there's some
Right,
language has been
right.
stricken, some has been added. A lot of it is frankly because we have too many lawyers involved in this, and everybody likes the way they word things rather than something else, so.
But in those several weeks that the county presented us with this particular proposal that's now been tweaked a couple more times, I guess I would say, has there not been any conversation at all as to how this was going to be done in all of this time? Can we get some sort of an indication?
I don't know of it. Jeff, do you know what they're offering us?
I'm not sure.
So,
And I'll speak, I'll let Amy speak too, and I won't speak for you, but I would, if I'm venturing to guess, I would say a lot of the structure is going to come once the county and authority brings in bond counsel. And last I heard, you have not retained bond counsel, have you?
Because I'm with Kevin, I'm really leery of that. That's kind of a dangerous
if
place to
if we
put it.
can't clarify the options today, you got to be willing to say at the moment of truth, even though everybody's moved along
Right.
down the field, you got to say, stop. We're taking it back.
Now you've negotiated with the mills, and you've negotiated with the
It'd
lien
be much
holders,
easier to
and-
know what we're dealing with.
And then we have nothing. But you can't say no at that point. We'll have to say yes to whatever it is, and that's sort of putting us in a bad position.
so we all agree that we need to know something about B before we go any further, right? So let's go. What else we got concerned about?
Well, I don't know that we're all in agreement on that, but we'll keep going. D was settlements.
I think we're okay with those changes.
Okay.
Been a problem with those.
Let's see here. Okay, next one down is,
The old F.
The F.
well, no. You mark through F, and there's another F on the next
That
page.
belongs with the E.
I beg your pardon?
The mark through F belongs with the E paragraph, and then
Okay.
you go to the new F on the next page.
We understand that the county makes those appointments. If we're in, we're all in. If we're not,
Well,
you know.
I thought the original proposal was that you were going to be all out, but.
Yeah, I did
and I
too.
don't want to speak for the
But that meant we weren't
for
on
the
bonds
judge,
and
but
giving
if
tip
he's-
money.
If he's
I mean,
taking the risk, he
general
wants
fund.
the control, which I think is fair.
I beg pardon?
Said the judge, is, taking this, if he's getting the risk, he ought to have control. And what we're doing here is shifting the risk from the city to the county.
Yeah, but
at the
you're
end of the day.
taking our general fund money. If
Yeah,
it were
there's
TIF,
about a
we'd be okay with that, but now you're going after
understand.
general fund. I don't see how we can do that.
There's about $500,000 all involved, Jeff, is that true? In the city
About right. With the s-
annually?
With the
in this
state
agreement?
and the general fund
We
money.
understand the control part of it, but we also understand that we've got skin in the game. And with that, we want another set of eyes.
I understand. Now, won't say.
All right, so we know what that is. On
And if you were talking, I'm sorry, if you were talking about the other set of eyes with Jeff involvement, or are you talking
And
about
Jeff and
commission.
one.
2 and 2?
Right.
Jeff
Lock,
and
deadlock.
Or it could be 3 and 2.
If we're a partner and we're not all on the same page moving forward, is it worth going after? I'm sorry, Jeff.
Now, I see what he was saying. Is it going to be a 5-member board or a 4-member? What are people feeling on that one?
I think a 5-member board would be fine to avoid a deadlock, but to send, have Jeff represent the city alone, it's kind of putting him in a unique position, not a real good position.
You need support.
He needs support from another member of this.
So
I
you're,
understand, but you already have 2 members.
so you're agreeing to 5, but
There are
only
2
of them are
city
us.
nominated members already members of this board. Your proposal that you sent to us Friday, we increased it to a 4-member board from a 5, which would create the deadlock. So we've just kept it as it currently is, 5 persons, 2 of whom were basically city representatives, but 1 of whom will be the chief financial officer as opposed to a nomination at large.
So are you saying we'll still get the nomination?
Yeah, I mean, that's still Mike's discussion, that it still would be generally 2. He just has to make the appointment. So legally, the way this was written, we think violated the statute to make it 4-4. It's going to need to be a 5-member board. Ultimately, he will make the nominations. He's agreeing that the chief financial officer will be one of his appointees as one of the 2 seats the city has always had.
Is that what you're agreeing to?
So we still get 2 on that board?
You have 2.
Well,
2 of 5.
We still have 2?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the issue was that there is a 5-member board now, all 5 appointed by the judge executive. 2 of them come from names submitted by the city. In previous discussions with the board, we had the understanding that this board kind of wanted that to be 4-4, still with the judge appointing, but with 2 of them still coming from recommendations here to basically have an equal-sized board. That's what we put in here. And I don't want to say anything that, since I've not legally researched this issue, I'm not sure the board has to be 5. It's what it is currently. And I think it probably can be 4 and 2 and 2, but that takes approval, of course, consent from the county to do that. So I think we just did something similar on the ITA. We went to an equal-sized board with one even number. So I think it can be. But if this board is okay with maintaining it at 5-2, that's what it is. That's where we are right now, and we have 2 members on that board.
I'm okay with that as long as we have 2.
Okay.
Okay, we got that.
So we're not asking Jeff to sit at a table and putting him into a position
I'll
that,
sit next to him. I'll be his friend, if that's what we're worried about.
And the next item was F, that you had a big problem with, as I understand.
That was, and maybe that was a failure to communicate, because I think we as staff, and maybe interpreting for the board as well, but I think we always assumed that any city pledged money, although some of this is city and state money both, but I think we were under the impression that any of the money that we were pledging toward this project was going toward the Block 6 RAP debt. And this is maybe kind of where we are today, Scott, because I think the basic parameters we've gotten done. And now we're getting down to nitty gritty, but either you or us will put something in, the other side will take it out, we get it back, and we put it back in again. And then we're, no offense against working on Sunday, but I don't like getting emails and writing stuff on Sundays. It would be nice to get a day off. But that's kind of where we are now. We just keep going back and forth. And so this was a new one, because I think this one did surprise us. Because we got it back, and the language that, I admit that the language that's in there that they have now proposed, that was what was in the original document. What I sent them Friday, I put this other language back in because I thought that was everybody's understanding. I wanted to clarify to make sure that these uncommitted block funds were going to be used toward the Block 6 RAP, and it would go to pool of money at the end of the debt payment too. So I put it in Sunday. I get this one back and it's taken out. Jeff and I called Keith Block this morning and asked, what is this? And that's when we were told, and maybe for the first time to our understanding, that the money from these blocks were not going to be committed to the RAP debt, that they were going to be made available to the county. Again, they have to use it for legitimate TIF projects, but I guess they could use it for their garage debt or for their Sky Park debt, or could use it for, I guess, even for TIF, for authority budget, I guess. Whatever other appropriate TIF projects they could use these funds for. But that was kind of the first time that Jeff and I had picked up that these monies were not going to be pledged for the Block 6 RAP debt. And that's what we thought, and I'm sure that's what we thought this board thought as well.
that's right.
Okay, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Commission, ask yourselves, we've met probably 10 times? At any time, did any of you think that we were meeting for something other than to fix the RAP? Were we meeting for anything other than using what money we were willing to contribute to a solution for anything other than the RAP? I wasn't. I was at every meeting. So were you. I mean, this was new. And I find this problematic. But if you thought it was the other way, staff will say, oops, we missed it. But we didn't think we missed it.
All right. Are we in agreement that it all goes to the RAP debt?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we can't have one financial guy be the post-Trump card for everything that they need. We'll have our financial guy be the Trump card then.
Okay, H and I are kind of along the same lines as actually going after city's general fund money, if I understand that correctly. Is that correct? H and I?
I'm not sure I followed you on. I'm sorry, man. Which one are you talking about?
Yeah, and H, we're agreeing to freeze the base
Yep.
growth at the 2013 level, and in I, we are agreeing to the city taking a 1.25% growth instead of the 2.03% growth in those specified blocks, those 6 blocks there. That's all that's saying. These 2 paragraphs are basically addressing the calculation of the money.
And this is what we had agreed to
This is
earlier.
what we agreed to the other day.
Can I add a part to that, though? It's important to realize the movement from one point to another point. This was a major concession by this group, right, to share the bases, correct? To reduce the amount that would go to the county to help indemnify their risk. This was a major concession.
The only thing in H was that one clause they had at the end, as long as the calculations should not result in a negative base, we'll try to figure out a way, because whatever happens, happens.
And you all had agreed to if you combine H, I, and J, that's mostly the effect on the general fund. You're talking about $280,000 starting out that would grow over the years. And then when you're talking about the revenues in item F, you're talking about starting out at about $225,000. So putting those two together, you're right there at the $500,000, a little bit more, like Commissioner Perigin mentioned.
But on 2.25, that was from TIF money.
2.25 is
But the
TIF.
280 is from the
280
general
is
fund.
the general fund from the base, redoing the base calculations.
All right. And y'all are comfortable with
That's
those
that's
three.
a substantial amount of money being invested year to year to year. You know, as a,
everybody okay?
Yeah.
All right. And then L, we don't know what that is. That's going to be defined, right? The
That's why
expenses.
that's what raised, I guess, our concern for us is that, when it said, recoupment of all expenses, just a definition of, if we can find out what expenses everybody's talking about here, when they're going to be paid, because I'm Scott, I can't see anybody's interested in incurring $30,000 worth of expenses now and not getting them back for 25 years. I would think they'd want them now, but we just got to figure out what this means. We're not really sure what expenses is defined to mean.
If it's, tenant improvements or whatever, let's just specify it. It needs to be specified.
Do we have any expenses that need to be?
Construction,
That
whatever.
need to be paid? Do we have any expenses that need to be paid also?
Other than Mr. Parson?
Yeah.
Well, that's an important part of it. I thought it was our understanding he was going to help draft agreements so that everyone's, especially us, understand the language.
I'm reading this though as expenses at the end of the term, but
Because you normally think
not
that the
sure.
bonds are going to cover those costs.
Okay.
So you're really talking about the final costs associated with the project and distributing those funds. So I don't think that, that's why I think it's really, we need to clarify that because it's so general right now. We need to understand is whether it is these final costs associated with paying off the bonds and things like that.
and this may be a non-issue anyway. If there may not be any excess funds, it may all be needed to cover the debt. Who knows? So.
Well, if they're legitimate expenses, why even mention them? I mean, that's something that you're supposed to pay. So it's whatever money is left over after everything is taken care of, right? Seems like extra language that's unnecessary at this point.
I would agree. We just need to figure
Yeah.
out what the meaning is.
the intent of it.
All right, I don't know that we have anything formal to vote on other than the term sheet as we have indicated with that commentary.
Well, just so that I'm, to make sure I understand from the discussions, maybe I should wait until there's actual motion, but the discussion appeared to be as to the paragraph F, to reject the county's proposal, and y'all are in essence making then a counter proposal with the money being reallocated in some other way, or were we, the discussion about that?
Well, if you go into the rejection part of it, then y'all technically rejected my original offer, so we want to stay
Well,
away from
I
that part of
understand.
it.
There's been a
Let's
lot
just
of back and
adjust
forth.
those
I
things.
just wanted to know, trying to make sure I understood if y'all were going to vote, what we're going to vote for, or do we need to address that? Is that still left as an open
Are
item?
you talking about B or are you talking
F.
about F?
They're
The
wanting-
discussion about whether that revenue
Our
was...
board is directing you all to apply that state and local TIF money towards the IRB debt, right?
And to divide it and put it in pool at the end
So,
for the division.
This
Right
is
now-
all about solving the problem
I
that they're at.
understand. I just wanted to
not
make sure that-
about the rest of the.
As of right now, the proposal the county had made at that point, on that point, is rejected. So
Right.
we're going to need county then to go back and reconsider
So
whether it's willing to accept your counter proposal.
Yeah, it'd be my recommendation we not vote on anything today, because I'm not sure anybody knows what we're voting on today. That we maybe go back and we got the basic parameters. I think everybody agrees with that. But it's always the details. It's always the devil in the details. And we go out and clarify and make sure everybody's on. Because what happens is we go back and the authority of the county says no, we can't live with that. Now we've approved something that basically is meaningless. So I think we need to go back, get the final document in form and shape and then bring it back.
Well, this may be your financial advisor's last minute comment. You might want to, he might be the only one that has an issue with it, so you might want to check into that, just, unless this was your comment, Scott. I mean, did you add that, or
Excuse me?
was this Keith's last minute add-in, you think, or?
I'm not sure if that was Keith's or that was the judge's.
Okay.
We can wait if you
I
want to
think
find
that what the
out.
language was is we went back to the language that has always been there, because that has always been his proposal and his understanding. We just took out what you added the last time. and
Call
went
it.
back to
We'll
the
take a
original.
break and wait
Call a
for you to
timeout.
find out.
How
You
about
want to give me
B?
a call?
How about B? What can we get for indemnification?
That's where my hang-up is, but you know.
Pardon?
That's where my hang-up is, but everybody knows that.
Talking about B?
Yeah,
You said D, right? D is in David?
B.
Oh, I'm sorry. no.
B.
B.
It would seem if it's subject to our approval, that should be a concern to the county to want to have no roadblock and be able to proffer some alternatives at this point, thinking that what you might approve.
What we're afraid of is that we'll agree to this and you'll come back with something less than the standard that the city's comfortable with, and then you'll say, well, the city rejected it again, and then it becomes our fault, and this is a mess. We
It's a
all need to
simple
work together
technical
to clean
point.
it up, but it's,
I understand, but, I guess we kind of feel in the same way, we're going to try to negotiate and want to know that we come back and the city's not going to say no too. So, I guess we're all going to take that first step together.
So what does that mean? All I'm saying from a staff point of view, the way the language is written, know that at some point, if they give us something you're not happy with, this boat could have sailed and you're going to have to pull it back into the harbor. That's all I want to know. I want you to know.
The
Yes,
only
ma'am.
thing, I personally believe we as a commission, the majority of us had already approved B moving forward, and that's what the county's received. What's in question now is what's in red. It's gone from 3 weeks to whatever you all think's in the best effort to get us the information we need. The key to me in B is it's a legally enforcement document. So once we approve this, we have this document. If you all don't do what you say, we'll see you in court,
That's right.
basically.
As to that paragraph, y'all's language, I think that was actually the staff's request and the legally enforceable agreement. All we have done is just change the time frame so that if it's 4 weeks before we can get it, we're not over back here fighting over it. We're going to move as fast as we can and do the best we can.
Is it not
I
in
just-
everyone's best interest to get it to us as soon
Yes.
as possible?
Surely that's not going to be the thing that blows all of this up. But the rest of the paragraph as to what's got to be delivered, that's been agreed upon for a week.
So how many items do we have that we have concern with, one side or the other? Let's number them, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that way everybody knows. B would be number 1, is that right?
No, we've already agreed.
I think what we're hung up there on B, Melinda, as I understand what I'm hearing here, is the vehicle to get that done. What does it look like? Give some sort of indication of what direction that you're thinking you're going to take as far as.
Or what they gonna offer?
But we haven't asked for that. I mean, to me, our language hasn't changed except for the red piece of this. That's what, we should have asked for that a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Well, to our defense, they've also asked a number of different items, even as this Sunday, that you're going to be willing to approve today. So if this is an agreement that's never done till it's done, our valid concern is equally valid as their changes this weekend. So, but again, it's all about what you all want to do. If you're happy with the fact we may have to say no after everything else has started.
well, to move it on, I think we've worked on, I see only 4 Although there's going to be work on some of the details in the added language, but our problems are, well, like Melinda said, we've already agreed to that. So our real issue is in, make sure I'm reading this right.
F. I think it's F.
So on paragraph F, y'all prefer to have what has been struck returned to that paragraph? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. And there's no,
Mr. Mayor, maybe if I can, based upon a text that we're getting here, maybe we can clarify the intent of some of that.
okay.
Was to make clear that the local revenue, TIF revenue, that the city is reallocating would go to debt service. What they tried to exclude from that was the state revenue that you don't control and not reallocating under this agreement. So what you would be allocating under this paragraph would in fact go to debt service. I think that could have probably been done by just accept state revenue. Would have probably been an
on
easier
paragraph
clean.
F?
Paragraph F, yes.
So, Jeff, the state revenue doesn't come down to us?
Is that what you're saying, Scott? There was about $170,000 starting out of state TIF money within that $225,000 amount. The rest was from the city. You're saying the state would be up to the county where that gets applied, but the city money would go to the debt service on the IRB. So the other remaining.
Why would we not put the state money in there too?
I think they want some freedom to be able to use that money for maintenance or undetermined expenses, finishing out the building. They want to go use the state TIF money for other things if necessary once paid off. But they want to use the city money to pay the IRB.
Can the TIF money from the state be used for those purposes?
Well, I think, kind of like Jim speak, I think the state TIF money can be used for any legitimate TIF purpose. And if that's administrative cost or to finish out what the wrap, I mean, as long as it's a legitimate TIF purpose, then yes.
So you're going to use that to finish out the building and correct the problems, but it's not going to go to some other block somewhere to do another project.
Absolutely correct. And frankly, we'll probably need the state TIF money to pay the IRB as well.
Right.
But that gives us some flexibility to finish out the building, maintenance on the building, et cetera, for the state money only, not the city. The city TIF money will go right into IRB.
So you all will update the language in that paragraph to reflect that? Yeah, because that sounds reasonable.
Well, what do y'all say? You want to vote on this with the additional language, and that way we have a framework to move forward? If we have to make a change, we'll make a change.
What are we voting on? We're voting on this term sheet?
This term sheet with the changes that you've seen and what Amy just said on paragraph F.
Well, I thought we were just going to have Scott, with the concerns we have and the ones we have listed, go away and come back.
Or at least half that, one of the two.
Can I just go away and not come back?
No, we want you to come back, Scott.
Because there are still 2 or 3 issues yet to be, I guess, worked out on the wording of what, you know, the negative base thing and the expense issue. There's a couple of things we'll still need to get wordsmith, if that's the word, to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Okay. We're not going to vote. We're just going to say the majority of us up here understand the language that you've presented, and there's still a few items to clarify. And when they're clarified, we'll vote on the proposal. Does that work? Yes,
Is that
no?
all right with you, Scott?
Well, I guess I would have liked to maybe some indication again, so I know whether we can begin trying to work out this deal and get these restaurants open and the rest of it, but, you know,
I
it sounds like that we're down to wordsmithing
I think you have that.
and, you know, the clarification of that F. So, subject to cleaning up the language and addressing the issues that were addressed, and then dealing with paragraph F, sounds like we're all on the same page, so I think we
you
can
actually
vote.
have that.
Vote subject to amending paragraph F and addressing the other
Let's take
wording, and then
Take
that
a
way.
recess?
But I think.
Take a
we can
recess.
Yeah, if we can take about 15 minutes.
That's
for-
fine.
For a restroom break, and we'll come back at about 5 after 3. And
You need a computer?
Now, need a phone.
Oh, no, I mean, to write a new term sheet.
be back in just a few minutes.
Vote on it.
Okay, welcome back to the special call meeting for March 30th, 2015. And I apologize to everybody watching, as my good friend Slim pointed out, we're a little bit late getting back to it.
That's unlike you.
Well, we had to wait for them to finish the document there. I need a motion to add Municipal Order 2015-46 to the agenda to vote on.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Denning, second by Hill. Is there any discussion about adding this to the agenda? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Perigin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. And now consideration of Municipal Order 2015-46.
Municipal order of the City of Bowling Green, Kentucky approving a conceptual agreement presented on a term sheet related to the tax increment financing Block 6 RAP project with Warren County.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill and second by Williams. So we've had a lot of opportunity to discuss that. Is there any further discussion? This municipal order contains basically what you saw on the screen, with some new language on paragraph F that we discussed, and clarifying that there were, or identifying that there were points to be clarified in paragraphs H, J, and L. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any discussion about the item on the agenda?
This is, just so everyone understands, we're approving the concept that was presented on the term sheet, not the term sheet.
Which means there may be some adjustments in the language.
And I have a question.
Yes,
Does
ma'am.
this give you all the authority to move forward with the parties
Yes.
involved?
I think this is what we needed, so we know, I think the city and the county are on the same page now, so we can go forward and work in earnest to see if we can get the other 3 legs to this chair.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or discussion from staff or commission?
We got rid of Scott.
I'm not coming back.
All right. Ms. Schaller, please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Perigin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
No. That's the end of the closed session, or excuse me, end of the special section. Is there anything else we need to do? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for tuning in.